let's say I'm listening to your podcast and it's just notable quotable after notable quotable after notable quotable. I'm like, you know what? As I'm listening to this podcast, I'm limiting myself to 4. That is it. So then once those 4 are done, every other piece of content that you say that really triggers something in me and inspires me, I now have to compare it against one of the other 4 to see which one I'm going to ditch, because I've maxed myself. I've made my overwhelm limit 4.
Welcome to the Wits and Weights podcast. I'm your host, Philip Pape, and this twice-a-week podcast is dedicated to helping you achieve physical self-mastery by getting stronger, optimizing your nutrition, and upgrading your body composition. We'll uncover science-backed strategies for movement, metabolism, muscle, and mindset with a skeptical eye on the fitness industry so you can look and feel your absolute best. Let's dive right in. Wits and Weights community, welcome to another episode of the Wits and Weights podcast. We have back on the show for a record 3rd time, Mr. Carl J. Berryman, host of the Inspired by Impact podcast and one of my closest brothers from another mother. Carl recently released a series of episodes about Men's Mental Health Month for November, covering everything from purpose to relationships to fitness and lots more. So subscribe to his show to check those out. And in one of the shows, it was on November 16, titled, "What are the best ways to use physical fitness to strengthen your mental health?" Carl had me on along with Paul Salter, and we discussed the very important concept of intentionality, of being intentional, deliberate, and directive with your actions after you hear something notable, helpful, inspirational, or profound in some way. What exactly are you, the listener? Yes, you, the listener, right now doing with all this content you consume? If you're an avid podcast listener, like I am, I've got dozens, if not hundreds in my feed. Perhaps you've been shows before, even Wits and Weights, which I'm grateful for. But then are you integrating that information actively into your life? Not just passively and then moving on to the next episode or video or distraction. Today, we're going to help you out. Carl is a master at implementing information and is also a regular listener of this podcast. And he is going to give you concrete examples of how he used the takeaways from a few of our earlier episodes and took action. Carl's going to demonstrate a very effective method he calls the mental muscle up, or MMU, to give you the exact steps you can take to do this yourself. And all I ask is that you try it with this very episode. Carl, my brother, I'm always excited to have you back. Welcome back.
I'm excited to be here as well, and I wanted to pick apart that intro a little bit, but of course you've just completely blown it out of the park, so thank you for that, and thank you for putting just a tiny bit of pressure on me for the MMU, because I didn't realize I was signed up for a workout here, but actually, we're all good. We're all good.
Hey, I'm your coach in this process, man. You're not going to get away from it.
You are. I love it. I love it.
Who also learns from you every day. And I'm really excited because you're running a challenge now in parallel with our 21-day challenge. You're doing a 24-day challenge. And I want to get into the drivers behind that and the process and the steps. But before that, as always, let's go back to principles, right? Okay. First, principles. Why should we care? Why is it important? Why is it necessary to be more than a passive consumer of content? And I ask that seriously because there are people who listen to content for entertainment, for information, for learning, maybe a mix of all three. I mean, I have stuff in my feed that has nothing to do with fitness. It's, science fiction or news or just entertainment stories or true crime. Why is it important to be an active consumer?
Great question. I'm going to play both sides of the fence. Number one, it's not if your goal is not expansion. If your goal isn't to get better, then it's not important at all. There's sometimes, say for example, when I go in the sauna, I don't like after every one of my workouts, I don't like taking notes on the stuff that I'm listening. So that's when I'll listen to like a modern wisdom podcast, right? Because while there's a lot of good takeaways there, I'm not going to apply anything specifically to the MMU unless something really jumps out at me. In that case, like one thing that I've learned over the years is that the good shit sticks. So I'll remember it anyways, or I'll just quickly take a timestamp. But I consume that more so for relaxing purposes. Whereas if I'm listening to your show, yours specifically, because I don't listen to every single episode, I go through the ones, and it seems like more often than not now, they're very applicable to specific goals. And I think that kind of goes hand in hand with how much more intentionality you've given me with regards to my physique transformation and nutrition. But so to put things into context, it's not important unless you are consuming content for the sake of getting better in a specific way. Then it's important to make sure that we're going from passive to active.
I like that you mentioned you pick the topics out that are relevant to you and also notice that they are specific. I occasionally will come across a new podcast that looks interesting, and then I start going through the episodes and I'm like, what is the purpose of the episode? Like they'll even have a big name guest on, this Olympic medalist who experienced all this success, and this podcast is all about success. I'm like, what are they getting at? And the questions are just kind of rambling. And so you're right. That is an aspect of being efficient with our time and being intentional is the content itself, not even what you do with it. It has to be worthwhile content.
Right. And so the analogy that just came up there is like you and I know you phrase it in terms of going from exercise to training. And I like to think of it in terms of going from working out to training. And this just, to me, I look at consuming content no differently. Like when I go into the gym, the next time I go in the gym, I just have to look at my journal to see what I did last time. If for whatever reason I forget, which I won't, but just to confirm, okay, what is today? Okay, today's legs. Okay, so what am I doing for legs? Okay, well, today is leg day 1 because I have it in a 2-day option now. So I know I'm doing squats, deads, and ham curls. Like those are the 3 exercises I'm doing. I'm not guessing. I'm going in specifically to do those things to accomplish a specific target. So when I'm consuming content relative to old Carl, who would I'd be the guy who essentially mentally went to the gym and just got on as many machines as I possibly could and pounded out as many reps as I possibly could without really thinking about, okay, is this actually taking me where I want to go? Like it doesn't make any sense for me anyways. And the reason why it didn't make any sense, because I noticed finally when I had a hardcore wake up call that all the time I was putting into the gym wasn't doing anything. And then when I looked at that, I was like, all this time and literally tens of thousands of dollars I'm investing in coaching and programs and communities. Like my life hasn't changed. And yet had you asked me throughout, I've been, oh yeah, man, I got this great idea. This is so good. I'm going to do it. And it's like, no, what you're doing isn't working. Like, when are you going to stop and wake the fuck up? Like,
that's like so many workshops and seminars and guru like speeches you go to and you're all fired up. Yeah. You might even get some material and then it just goes on the shelf and you're done. And 2 days later, it's back to normal. Yeah. Okay. So you're talking about intentionality. I want to address again how, okay, let me give you my personal experience. I've got a lot of podcasts in my feed and I try to whittle them out, when they aren't relevant anymore. But I do notice that some shows will build up and others immediately when the episode comes out, I want to listen to it. Right. And that's a form of intentionality in my opinion, right? Where I know that there are things that are serving me, but it's not as rigorous as what I'm hearing from you, which I'd be curious about. How do you curate what you listen to and when you listen to it without it becoming, some people might say, well, I'm not going to have a calendar for like what podcast to listen to when. How do you do that?
Another awesome question, Philip. Thanks for that.
That's what we're here for, man.
Exactly.
There's awesome questions
and mediocre answers. Okay.
No, come on, man.
So how do I curate it? There's a couple different ways. So specifically when I'm doing my mental muscle ups, like in the morning, that journaling experience, I have to make sure for me that I'm not just spending every single morning focused on purpose. Because purpose is the one thing that I can't stop ever thinking about. I just can't. Like the podcast, the training manual, everything like that, right? So because when I was younger, I hated doing legs at the gym. But I don't want to be one of those guys who's got a jacked upper body and just these ridiculous chicken legs. Like you have to train every single muscle group. You have to. So that's how I develop intentionality in terms of I'll go back in my journal and I'll just look at, oh man, you haven't done, ironically enough, physical health and fitness is the one that gets skipped the most for me. And I say that because my physical health and fitness is probably the aspect that I'm least concerned with at this point in time because of your help and my intentionality. I've gotten myself to a point where I'm content but not satisfied because I definitely want to achieve more. Yet at the same time, if I have to allocate my time, which is limited, to other areas of the prep work, say, for example, relationships or my mental and emotional health and fitness, those are going to take a priority. So really it boils down to what haven't I been training, or where does it hurt the most?
Okay, I like that, because you, in your training manual, which I'm showing on the video here for YouTube, this is the Brotherhood Bootcamp training manual. You've got the prep work, as you call it, the PREP, right? Yep. Purpose, relationships, emotional, and physical. And you're saying that you can choose on any given day which one you're going to focus on, and sometimes you just don't focus on something for a while.
Yeah.
And maybe you need or want to. Yep. You also mentioned, though, sometimes you do that intentionally because it doesn't need that right now. There's all these things to balance. You only have so much time in the day. You kind of go between them, and maybe one can uplift the other when you focus on it, right? So people listening, like Carl's really good with the analogy of taking the gym and applying it to life. Like he said, the chicken legs versus the strong upper body, which is like the opposite for women, right? It's big legs. And
yeah, that's right. That's right.
So all of this aspect of intentionality is really important. And you're wondering, why the hell do I have Carl in here to talk about this on a fitness show? Besides, he's one of the best dudes in my life, and you're going to learn a lot from him. Is when you're listening to this show, I put out 2 episodes a week and 2 short episodes a week. And if you're listening to every single one of those, that's a lot of time commitment. And I thank you for that, but I want you to take action with that, right? And so I want to understand, Carl, now let's drill down a little bit more with your focus on integrating lessons from podcasts in your life. What are the steps that somebody can take without being overwhelmed right now?
Okay, so really, really quickly, inside the gym again, I really like to, as I'm teaching classes or working with clients, I really like to use the scale of level 1, 2, 3. And so level 1 is take it nice and easy. Level 2 is dial up when you can, dial back when you need. And level 3 is give it everything you got. So as it relates to, remind me of the question so I can make sure I dial this in right.
The question is, when you are listening to podcasts, how do you take the next step from that to action?
Okay, excellent. So when I first started, like the training manual that you're holding in your hands, that is the level 3 as far as I'm concerned. Like those 5 questions are level 3. So it might be a little bit intense for everybody, or not everybody, for some people, because it requires a lot of introspection. And if you're not used to introspection, it's going to be a bit much. It's like putting too much weight on the bar. So the first level is just kind of contemplation. So you hear something and man, like just kind of sit there with it for a minute. Like you don't have to do anything. Just let it sink in. Because eventually what I've found, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this, is it's going to come back in some way, shape, or form. And there will be something that happens in your life where you can apply what you were contemplating on. But I don't really want to leave it to chance like that. So level 2.
Hold on. Let's address that though. The contemplation. When you say it comes back, do you mean because you're continuing to consume content that the theme reemerges because it's relevant to you, or something else?
No, something else. I'm glad you asked for clarification on that. So for example, I can't think of a specific. No, I can think of a specific example. So day 1 of our challenge, like the 24 before 2024 challenge, was all about values, right? So this morning when I'm going for a walk, it was something that happened later in the day. I was on Instagram and I saw Chris Williamson from the Modern Wisdom podcast post a post that he got 1.5 million subscribers. Okay, so instantly that triggered a little bit of just insecurity in me. I'm like, man, this guy's so far ahead of me, right? So, but now since values is top of mind for me, I immediately asked myself the question, Carl, what do you truly value? Like, what do you really value? Do you value the number of subscribers or downloads you have? And it's like, no. What I truly value is the connection I have with the people that I love the most. And the video you sent me today, and then Alan sent, and then Dennis texted me as well. Like, that's what I value. So am I going to feel horrible about something that means nothing to me, in this case, subscribers? or I'm going to feel amazing about what means the most to me. And that's connection with the guys in my life. So that's what I mean by if you're just contemplating something, now you're kind of putting it into your RAS so that you can start keeping an eye open for it a little bit more. So that's level 1. And then level 2, which is what we're doing in the challenge right now for part of it, is just answering a question that's relevant to what you're consuming. So for example, if I hear from your podcast, like the one with Mike Milner, what was that, 126?
Oh, geez.
No, it was 123. It was 123.
Yeah, 123.
So there were a lot of gems in there. But the one that hit me the hardest that I did an MMU on was this idea of depositing trust money into your bank account, like self-trust, right? Mm-hmm. So now I'm asking myself the question, how can I continuously make deposits into my self-trust bank account? And then I'm literally writing it down and finding an action step that represents me putting those words that inspired me into action. So that's level 2.
So that's inspiration.
Yes.
Okay.
Level 3, the difference between level 3 or level 2 and level 3 is the difference between exercise and training. So it's all good to hear really, really good stuff and implement it right away, but that's like going to the gym without a plan. It's better than sitting on the couch, but it still might not get you anywhere. And even if it does, you're going to hit a plateau and you'll probably stay there. So what really helped me go from level 2 to level 3, in other words, exercise to training, was making sure that those steps I was taking were linked to a very specific outcome that I was wanting. So, for example, with you, the goal is to gain muscle, right? Like I want to add some muscle. So if I'm listening to your podcast and I'm like, oh man, that's a really good idea. I should start tracking my calories. Okay, yeah, that's good and everything like that. And this is a really good example because you know better than anybody, I hated tracking calories and now I love it. The reason why I hated it before is because it wasn't linked up to a specific target. I knew I should do it. I knew there was benefits to it, but it wasn't linked up to something specific that I was measuring. And this is where I used to go wrong big time. I would have goals like, I want to get bigger. I want to get stronger. I want to be in better shape. Those aren't goals. Like those are just words. Like what does that even mean? Like what does that look like? So what do I want to look, feel, and perform like? If I can define those to the point where I can measure them, now I'm going from exercising to training. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense. So you can either contemplate, that's level 1, right? And one of the things you talk about in your manual and on your show all the time is no level zeros. So at least doing something here is way better than nothing. It's kind of like going from 0 to 80%, then you go from 80 to 90, and then 90 to 100. Level 2, answering the relevant question, getting inspired, putting it, what you've heard into a question to yourself that you then answer. And then level 3, linking that to specific outcomes that you are measuring. Right. And in your challenge, you're doing it kind of an escalating approach to get there for the brothers in that, because people might feel overwhelmed doing it all on day 1. Just like if I told you, you need to train, you need to sleep, you need to do this, all on day 1, forget that. I'm going to go back and do keto again.
Oh yeah, keto.
Sorry, that's the boogeyman for me.
No, I get it. The boogeyman. I like that. The keto boogeyman. I like that a lot.
Yeah, it's the trigger. So, all right. So you gave a little example there from the episode 123 with Mike Milner. I don't know if you want to dive into more of that or another example that's specific to this show, so people listening can be like, oh, okay, that's how I can do it.
Yeah, we'll do another one. And actually, I'm not going to do. So I sent you the 3 this morning, but I'm gonna skip the one, or I'm gonna call an audible on the one from your episode 100. Do you happen to have that handy, what the quote was that I got from you there? I don't remember it offhand. If you don't, I can
Wait a minute. You sent me that this morning? What? Okay, I got a bunch of
which means I can pull it up right away. Give me 2 seconds.
Yeah, go for it. Is it the one with all the photos?
Yes, it is. So, so I got it right here. Okay, so this is what Philip said in episode 100. He said, quote, "Skepticism is not just questioning everything that comes at you, it's questioning everything that comes from you," end quote. And I remember specifically when I was in the gym listening to that, I had to stop what I was doing. Be like, oh, that was gut wrenching. Like it was a gut wrenching aha moment. So I'll just, you know what? Yeah. I'm going to call an audible on this one and pull it through the MMU. So the first question in the MMU is, what is your situation? And essentially think of that like you're determining what you're going to be training inside the gym. Like what is the outcome that you're kind of going towards? So you define what the situation is. So if you're going to the gym, I want to increase my bench by 20 pounds. Okay, well, that's the situation. In this case, I'm realizing that I have some stories and some beliefs when it comes to my physique that probably aren't serving me. So what are those beliefs? And how do I change them to ones that are serving me? So that's what I would put as the situation.
So let's break that down real quick. So you took a quote that I said, and by the way, this is really cool that you could talk to the person who said the quote, right? Because sometimes the things I will say on a podcast, and I'm sure you've seen this the same, they just come out. It's not like some profound thing, and it hits somebody else. And I'm not going to diminish that at all. I'm not going to say, I didn't mean anything by it when you took something from that. That's awesome. So the skepticism not at you, but from you, you heard that. That's your notable quotable, the phrase you use. Yeah. And you turn that into an interpretation for you of limiting beliefs. Yes. Right? Which is extremely profound concept in everything we do to improve. And then you said, okay, that's the beginning of my inspiration, right? Yeah.
Okay, right. So that's where you then link it back to the situation. And side note here, when I do, you can look at it a couple different ways. It's like if you go to the gym and it's leg day and you normally, like say for me, it'd be squats, deads, and then leg curl, right? Well, let's say all the squat racks are taken and for whatever reason, there's no Olympic bars. Well, I don't want to do leg curls first for sure, because like that's definitely going to limit my squats and my deads. But at the same time, I don't want to wait half an hour to start my workout. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to go there. So there's flexibility in the way that you do the exercises. Same thing with this. In the mornings, I always start off with the situation because I'm lucky that I have access to hundreds of quotes that I've gotten in my podcast that I have readily available on my phone. So I know who the author is, and it's like, okay, so today if I'm working on physical health and fitness, I'll just go to all the Philip Pape quotes that I have, and I'm going to pick one that is relevant to whatever I've defined the situation to be. And so then, but if you get your notable quotable first, chances are it hit you for a reason, and that reason is something that you can probably put in the form of a question that is a challenge that you were facing. So applying the notable quotable and then defining your situation in the form of a question that represents a challenge you're facing makes it so much easier that or much more likely that whatever you took from the podcast is going to serve you well.
Okay, I like that. So you take a quote that you hear, turn it into a question. I would expand on that, and I know you have as well, that it doesn't have to be a verbatim quote. If you hear a general idea, a concept, something you're paraphrase, maybe it was half an hour ago in the podcast and it's been sticking with you and now you just want to get it out. You don't necessarily have to find the timestamp. We want to make this easy for people to get what you want out of it. And there you go. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's perfect, because then in this situation, if I didn't have the timestamp, I'd have been like, oh, what did Philip say? It would have been something along the lines of don't believe everything you think. Okay. And then I just write down, don't believe everything you think. And that would be my quote unquote notable quotable. So then the next question inside the MMU is, what is your transformation? And this one really, really helped me. Where did I hear it first? I can't remember. I think I read it somewhere actually, where you hear about this couple and they're looking to go on vacation. So they go to the airport and they're talking to a travel agent and they're like, oh, well, where do you want to go? They're like, we're not quite sure. It's like, well, what was the last vacation you went on? Oh, we went to this place. We went to that place. Well, what did you like about it? Well, you know what? I'm not really sure. But then, so he's had enough of this, like just going around and around. So he says, what didn't you like about the vacation? Oh man, the food wasn't really that good. Oh, the hotel wasn't all that clean. And people can just rattle off what they didn't like about it, right? So he's like, okay. So now he makes a list. He has a list of all the things that they don't want. So it's like, okay, so then a vacation that you would be looking for would be one that has great food, one that has one that has whatever it is they listed, right? So he just lists off like 5 things. So I found that for me, what really helps to get me clear about what I do want is to first list out what I don't want, which is why what is your transformation? You list 4 things that you don't want versus 4 things that you do want. So in this case, if I'm looking to be a skeptic for myself, and keep in mind, I'm just doing this impromptu. If I'm looking to be a skeptic of my own beliefs, what I want to make sure is that I'm not letting my limiting beliefs guide my behavior. So what I would want on the opposite of that is I want empowering beliefs to guide my behavior. And then I would keep going down the list, just saying the opposite of what I don't want, to get very clear about what I do want, because now it's going to be dialed into what I want at the end of the day, right?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense the way you explained it, where because of psychology, we love to criticize, we love to say what we don't like. If everything goes well, we tend to be, it's like going to Amazon looking at a product. You're going to see the 1-star reviews and the 5-star reviews. The 5-star reviews are probably all bought for. And the 1-star reviews are all the honest reviews, and nobody reviews them in between, right? So, and that just for listeners, right? Again, in your training manual, that is the next section. What is your transformation? And it is just 4 lines that say don't versus do. And what Carl just said is, if you can't think of what you want to do, think of what you don't like, and then turn it into the opposite of what can serve you. Awesome.
Yeah. And as it relates to our physical body, right? Like for me, if I say, you know what, I don't want my arms to be small. I don't want to have a flat chest. I don't want to not be able to see my 6-pack. Okay, well, what do I want? I want jacked arms. I want a full chest. I want a ripped 6-pack. Like it comes so much quicker if you're stumbling upon the things that you do want if you first list the things that you don't want. So anyways, not to beat that.
Cool. No, and Carl probably notices me looking down a lot, but again, I'm just admiring his training manual as we go through
bad,
this.
Eh? Like
no, it's great.
You like the way the cover feels? I like the way the cover feels.
Yeah, no, it's nice. But it's structured. It's like you've got it all listed in here, and the whole first 30 pages explain this whole process, and give you a bunch of examples. So, all right, so that's the transformation. You've got your situation, your notable, quotable, your transformation, and then what's next?
The next one is, what is your inspiration? And what I found with this one, and this actually ties back to what you said, because what you said is that sometimes you say things on your podcast that become aha moments for somebody else that weren't necessarily what you meant. So what I found for me is that the 4th question, what is your inspiration, allows you to make this really personal and customized to you. So it's where you're essentially, what I do is right before I'm about to write out what is my inspiration, I go back and I just really quickly review, okay, what was the situation? What's the notable, quotable, and what's the things that I don't and do want? And then I'm trying really to come up with an answer for what is the situation. And I'm just kind of word vomiting on the page to let my own inner wisdom come through. Like, what does this mean to me? It might be a place where I let out some more frustrations about the way that, in this case, the way that my limiting beliefs have been holding me back. Why I need to let them go, how it's not serving me. So this is kind of a free-for-all, but it's where you kind of bring everything together and put it into context before the final and what I would say is the most important step. So
that makes sense. So you've taken these pieces, you're now putting them together in free form. It kind of reminds me of a classic journal. I know we don't necessarily want to use the word, but that's what it looks like to me is kind of putting it together, which is nice because then you get the brain dump away from all the initial information you wrote down. You're synthesizing it, right? Yeah. It's kind of like when you have all your notes and you need to write a paper or do a podcast. Now you're synthesizing it together. Yeah. And then what comes after that?
So before what comes after that, though, to give an example, I want to demo what I wrote down for this one specifically in today's MMU. So what is your inspiration? I put, what if I'm completely wrong? I love and hate this question because at first glance, who wants to be wrong? Yet isn't being wrong typically the first step to being right? So what do I want to be right about as it relates to my body? And what does right look and feel like both tangibly and intangibly? So now I'm really just asking myself more questions to help me get clear on the next step, which is, what is your integration? And this one, oh man, if I were to show you the different pieces and versions of the training manual, this is the one that's given me the most headaches because I've been doing this since 2017. And for such a long time, it used to be called implementation. I was doing the implementation, but nothing was really changing. And there would be times where I didn't do what I was supposed to do, and I wouldn't realize it until the next morning. And I opened up the training manual. I was like, oh man, yeah, that's right. I was supposed to do this. And I just forgot. So there's 5 extremely critical steps there, because the question, what is your integration? The whole idea behind that is to get you to take one small, specific, and simple action in the next 24 hours, whatever that is. So the first 3 of those 5 little literally check boxes in the training manual that you want to check off to make sure you're doing the right thing. There you go. Thank you, Philip. That's awesome. So, or small, specific, and simple. But then I added 2 that made a huge difference. Number 1 was scheduled. So I had to literally set an alarm in my phone to remind me when I was going to take the action that I come up with. And then shared. So shared, I might change in the next version of the manual to either say spot, so that I can ask somebody for a spot with that, or shout out, because if you were the one who inspired me with your notable quotable, I want to give you a shout out for helping me take this action.
So that's the community / accountability / brotherhood aspect of that.
Yeah. You know what? Yeah. Even I'm not a huge fan of that word, accountability, to be honest.
Okay. Support, community, whatever you want to call it. Friends.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I like the scheduled, right? Because I don't know if any of this was inspired by the SMART acronym, which specific, measurable, actionable, whatever it is. There's a million versions of
measurable, actionable, realistic,
time bound.
Yeah. Time bound, even realistic. Like,
I know.
What's a realistic goal? Give me a break. That's why, anyways.
The schedule part is important, though, because sometimes that comes up a lot with my clients, where it's just add a reminder to your phone. Like that, if you do nothing else, just put this reminder in your phone. And like you said, it might be a reminder to remind yourself or something. Like it may not even be the thing itself, because you don't know when you're going to do that thing necessarily. Right?
Yeah.
My name is Tony. I'm a strength lifter in my 40s. Thank you to Phil and his Wits and Weights community for helping me learn more about nutrition and how to implement better ideas into my strength training. Phil has a very, very good understanding of macros and chemical compounds and hormones and all that. And he's continuously learning. That's what I like about Phil. He's got a great sense of humor. He's very relaxed, very easy to talk to. One of the greatest things about Phil, in my view, is that he practices what he preaches. He also works out with barbells. He trains heavy, not as heavy as me, but he trains heavy. So if you talk with him about getting in better shape, eating better, he's probably going to give you some good advice. And I would strongly recommend you talk with him, and he'll help you out. Thanks.
Yeah. Another piece of that, though, that I got from James Clear's book, Atomic Habits. And that's why the first part of the integration is your I am statement. So I found for me that linking behaviors to the type of person I know myself or that I want to be, and he talks about this in Atomic Habits, is extremely powerful for getting us to follow through on the things that we have difficulty following through on. So linking it up to an identity statement. So in this case, my identity statement for physical health and fitness, because I have 1 or 2 for each area of the prep work that are just standards that when I say them and I think them, they generate a very, very empowering feeling in me. And one of my I am statements for physical health and fitness is, I am one jacked motherfucker. And as soon as I read that, it's like, yeah, whatever this action is, it's getting done.
No, that's like a vision board, man. It's like having Arnold and like Ronnie and all these guys on the vision board. Like
or
that's
Philip Pape.
Yeah, right. Cool, man.
So
yeah, self-identity. Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah, the integration is easily the most important part in terms of making sure that, listen, you're listening to brilliant guys like Philip. Let's put their words to some actual action. And the reason why I switched it from implementation to integration is because I wanted to get myself to start thinking about, rather than just like one hit wonder steps, because that's what I was doing all the time. I like to think about little, like the Atomic Habits thing, where little tiny habits that I can start developing into practices.
Right. That you continue to do that are part of your new routine. Yeah.
Right. So say, for example,
comfort zone. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Like the other day when Derek had that whole thing on gratitude, right? So one of the things that this was just a conversation with a friend of mine that when I had him on my podcast, and he mentioned how gratitude for him is the first step to self-awareness. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to start practicing gratitude a little bit more about how am I going to do it. So now, since I'm going for walks every day, thanks to Philip, I have two different types of walks. I have a walk with the block, which is the block is my inner enemy. Let's call him that. So I give him some airtime and let him come out and tell me why he's doing what he's doing and what he needs from me. And then I do the same thing with gratitude. So I'll go for a gratitude walk where it's like, hey, what is the one thing I'm really going to be grateful for during this walk, and just giving that some emotionality. So what are the practices that I can potentially make into an integration? That way it is actually integrated into my life and therefore has a much more likely chance of sticking.
Okay, so then I have a follow-up on that, and it's actually two parts. One is, how do you avoid getting overwhelmed because you're doing this every day and now you're coming up with a new action every day, where those would stack up if they were all new habits every single day, 5 days, 7 days a week? You're starting something new, and you could just imagine these layering on top of each other as this overwhelming set of things you're doing. If they're not one-hit wonders, that's one. And then the other piece is, how do you close the loop? You know, you've written it down. How do you hold yourself? I guess I will use the word accountable, but it's self-accountability to that.
Okay, are you going to remember both those questions? Because I won't.
Yes, I will.
Okay.
I'm sorry. That's like what media does, right? To the politicians up on the dais.
Yeah,
ask
that's
them three
right.
questions in once. Yeah.
Okay, so the first question is, how do you prevent overwhelm?
Yeah, how do you prevent overwhelm?
Okay, so let's say in the gym. Right now, there are so many different principles that I could be using during my workouts, right? Like I could be supersetting. I could be doing 5x5s. I could be doing German volume training. I could be doing long range partials, which I am right now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pick one, and then I really have to decide, okay, how long am I going to test this for? Because I don't know if it's going to work, but I want to test it. If I'm coming upon new stuff all the time, I then have to compare it to say, okay, number one, have I given my previous thing enough time to actually see if this works? If the answer is no, then I just discard it. And if the answer is yes, it's like, okay, we're going to move on to this something new. Or do I really, really like long range partials? I'm getting great results, so there's no need to change it. So how long have I been doing it? Have I given enough time to test? And then another really, really simple thing that helped me. Oh man, you should have seen my notes before whenever I was doing, let's say I'm listening to your podcast and it's just notable quotable after notable quotable after notable quotable. I'm like, you know what? As I'm listening to this podcast, I'm limiting myself to 4. That is it. So then once those 4 are done, every other piece of content that you say that really triggers something in me and inspires me, I now have to compare it against one of the other 4 to see which one I'm going to ditch. Because I've maxed myself. I've made my overwhelm limit 4. Mm-hmm. Which means if anything else comes after the 4, it's either replacing one of the 4 or it's not making it to the list. Just like exercises. Like, how many exercises do I have time for in the gym today? Well, I'm going to be there for 45 minutes. I know, given how I'm doing it, 3 exercises is good for me. But what if I want to do 5? Too bad. You've got time for 3.
Yeah. Let's get more specific, though. If you're doing your prep work every day in the journal,
yeah,
and you're writing down an integration action, because you have the statement here, I am committed to doing something by some time.
Yeah.
Right. And generally I'm guessing like you said it's within 24 hours.
Yeah. Is
that action something you can do once, or is this sometimes an action that then becomes a repeated action?
It's both.
Okay. And the ones that become repeated actions, couldn't you get overwhelmed every day by adding a new one? Or do you sometimes repeat the one you did yesterday? And if I'm overthinking this, let me know.
You are not overthinking this. This is a brilliant question, and it takes us into IBI principle number 1, right? Quality versus quantity. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the times when I'm doing, when I'm doing the MMU now, I've done it so many times. It's like if you're doing a squat, for example, I found one of the things that really helps me add weight to my squat is if I focus on, at the bottom of the squat, forcing my knees out, like really thinking about forcing my knees out in order to get up faster. Like that's just a cue that works for me. Doesn't have to work for everybody. But what I found with the MMUs is at some point in time, those cues, you're not going to have to think about them. They're going to become unconscious because you've done them so many times. So now when I'm going into that 5th question, what is your integration? I'm automatically thinking of quality over quantity. So I'm probably going to ask myself a question that will represent me doing something that I'm already doing with a higher level of quality.
Okay.
So that way you're not really piling on more and more things to do. You're going for depth instead of width.
I like it. Okay.
Yeah.
That's actually a really good answer. And, I might throw that in our group later as like inspiration, right? As a notable quotable from today.
Okay, I like it.
Okay, that's my action.
And then the second question, what was it again?
The self-accountability. So now you have that. The next day comes along. What if you didn't do it? Like, there's a chance you didn't do it. So
yeah, that happens.
Yep.
Oh, okay. So there's a couple things that happen there. Number one is I scheduled it. So in my phone, I have a standard alarm that just says MMU. And then I change it to whatever time I've designated during my morning routine that is going to be the time that I do my MMU. But sometimes stuff comes up and I can't get to it. So there's a couple different options that I do. Number 3, if you think about it. Number 1, well, if I didn't do it, maybe it wasn't important enough to be done. So then I'm really going to evaluate if I needed to do it. Maybe I just got lazy. Maybe I got busy. So now it's like, okay, well, do I need to put this on top of the thing that I'm planning on doing today? So again, now it's like going back to that thing of where I have 4 notes, but now it's really 2. So, but what I usually do is most of the things that I come up with in terms of integration steps don't take very long at all. And they're things that I can do in really a few minutes. So what I do is every morning I go to my previous pages, and I don't have this in your current training manual, but at the top where it says PREP, I'm rating myself out of 3 in every area of the prep work to give myself a daily score.
Okay.
So then I do that before I start a new MMU. So then if I'm going back and it's like, I didn't do that thing for physical health. Now it's like, did it need to be done? No. Okay, we'll move on. Yes, it needed to be done. So say, for example, not your latest episode, but episode 126, where you talked about the importance of carbs and making sure that I'm not going to, I'm not ripping down my muscle and using it as fuel, essentially. Mm-hmm. That's an important one for me. So if I didn't do yesterday's MMU and today's MMU was based on that from your podcast, guess what? It's gone. I'm forgetting about it, because focusing on my carbs, which is essentially what I did this morning, really long story short, with that MMU, I realized I'm not, like in macro factor, I'm hitting my calories, I'm hitting my protein, I'm hitting my fat, but I'm not hitting carbs. Mm-hmm. And I've noticed that it's really affecting my energy throughout the day. So what I came up with, long story short, for the integration is going into macro factor today in advance, making sure that my day hits my carb targets. And then at the end of the day, and I set an alarm for this, is I'm going to give myself a rating for my energy as it relates to my carbs. So I'm going to write down, what was your energy out of 3? Oh, it was level 3 in the evening. Okay, well, what was your carb count? Well, your carb was 367, and that's what it's supposed to be. Okay, awesome. So now over a couple weeks' time, I'm going to be able to see, does the amount of carbs that I have actually affect my energy in the evening? Because that's what I want to know. So I'm going to do that for a couple weeks.
Everyone listening should do that. No, I'm just saying.
And there you go.
Really good.
But you see, this integration step, how much time does it take me to write down my energy level and compare it to my carbs? Like, that's 30 seconds. So a lot of these steps, sure, there could be a lot of them, but they all take like 15, 30 seconds. And some of them are automatic.
And that's actually part of the answer right there, is just keep them short and simple, because you are going to get overwhelmed if it's like, make a list of 100, blah, 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 and then do this and do this and do that. It's funny because I'm a little bit, I'm organized in a different way, but like I will keep emails unread in my inbox. I have a very small inbox. I'm a zero inbox type of person. I like to just take care of things or file them away if it's just information, or leave them unread if I'm going to get them done. But the lower they get on the list, that I realize they must not be that important. And eventually it's like, they go.
Delete.
You know?
Yeah.
So it's the same kind of thing. You just never know. Because in the moment you're all excited. You're like, I got to do this thing. And then you really, time is an interesting moderator.
I do that with a lot of your text messages, actually. I'll read them and I'm like, this isn't important. I'll make it unread. And then I just completely delete you altogether. So
oh, that explains it. Explains a few things. No. All right. So if I haven't lost the audience with getting too much technical about this, hopefully not. I think it's a pretty cool approach no matter what. Like whether you have Carl's journal, the principles are, time tested and you've referenced things that you've borrowed from, right? Like Atomic Habits and behavioral psychology and all this stuff. Carl's the man to reach out to if you have questions about this. I want to get into some follow-ups on this outside of the specific application. For example, doing this process, is there something that has really surprised you, over the years after listening and then going through this process?
Great question. And it already makes me think that I can't believe I haven't thought of an answer in advance to what your last question is going to be. But yeah, the thing that surprised me, and this may sound like, it's not going to sound like a broken record to your audience, but it sounds like a broken record to me. One of the reasons I first started doing this journaling process, if you will, was because when I hit rock bottom back at the end of 2020, beginning 2021, I really wanted to evaluate and figure out what the lead domino in my life was as it related to the prep work. So is it my physical health and fitness? Is it my emotional health and fitness? My sense of purpose? Like, what is it that if I take care of it, it's going to take care of everything else? And it made sense to me that it was my emotional health and fitness, because I'm like, man, if I can become the master of rather than the slave of my emotions, and despite how I feel I can take the actions that I know I need to take, that to me is like the lead domino. So I followed that for a long time and nothing changed. In fact, it got worse because I was putting so much pressure on myself. So then I just asked myself that, again, at that point in time, I was being skeptical of my own beliefs. So I was saying, okay, Carl, what is the thing? I kind of pulled a George Costanza in that I did the opposite. So if you don't know who George Costanza is and what the opposite is, then just stop listening if you're not into Seinfeld, because I don't want to talk to you. Anyways, so relationships was the bottom of the prep work for me. Like the bottom, hence why Jenny Lee and I had our 3-month separation. And just, yeah, had you asked me if our relationships were important to me, I'd been like, yeah, they are. But if you look at my actions, they're not, because I'm canceling on friends. I'm not returning messages. I'm not returning calls. I'm not spending time with Jenny Lee. So I said, okay, well, what would happen if I did the opposite? What if I made relationships like the lead domino? And wouldn't you know, that changed everything, absolutely everything. So what surprised me, and this has become a fundamental belief of mine, is that if I wanted to improve any area of my life, whether it was my body, my sense of purpose, and especially my mental and emotional health, it all depended on the quality of the relationships I had with the people I cared the most about. I was not expecting that.
And that has carried forward into your mission today. I mean, it shines in everything you do, is connecting people to each other and connecting with them. So if someone listening feels like they are struggling and they're like, well, I like your idea, but I'm overwhelmed and I'm not sure where to start. And maybe it's mental health, maybe it's something else. Like you said, emotion sounded like the obvious root cause because it was tied into mental health, but something else was holding it back, even if you had quote unquote leveled up your emotion as best you could. How can someone figure that out?
Well, to me, it's like I didn't figure out with the squat that that if I focus on doing my knees out until, I'm going to say this was within the last 18 months, and I've been a personal trainer for 12 years. So it's going to be a matter of taking and testing. So consuming something that works or that you think is going to work and testing it out. The hard part is you got to figure out, okay, how long do I need to give this before? It's like a diet, right? So if people are going to try, say, for example, Shredtober, okay, well, if people are going to do that, you got to stick with it for the 2 weeks to see if it actually works. You can't do Shredtober for a week and you can't do it for 6 weeks. You got to do it for the specified amount of time. So you got to figure, okay, well, if I think this is really going to help me, what's a realistic amount of time that I need to give this to see if it actually works? And more importantly, this is one of the questions. It's called the miracle questions from the book Switch, which is a phenomenal book on habits. A miracle question that therapists would use with their clients. Say, for example, if they're an addict or an alcoholic, say, okay, you wake up tomorrow and your problem is 100% gone, and you're like, you're just a new person. What would be the first sign that you know it's gone? So when it comes to our goals and changing them from goals to targets, if we can get clear about what the first sign is that what we're doing is working, then we'll be able to really tell if we know what we're doing is working. So for example, like I've got a client who I had a conversation with him the other day about macro factor. He went in and he changed his goals to weight loss because the scale wasn't going down. And we had a very interesting conversation. So he changed it back. But I said, dude, like, what are you measuring? Like, what specifically are you measuring? He's like, well, I'm measuring my waist circumference and I'm measuring how my clothes fit. Like, I want to lose weight because, and then I ask him why, because I want my clothes to fit better. I want to feel stronger. I'm like, do your clothes fit better right now? Yeah, they're looser. Do you feel stronger right now? And do we have the numbers and the evidence to support that? Yes. So then why are you changing your fucking targets? Because he lost sight of what his targets actually were.
Wow, that's okay. I'm processing this because I'm trying to think of what the people who are listening. You just gave them a few different ways to approach this. One way sounds like, first of all, the prep work has different areas, right? And if you can identify the different areas of your life, at least spending time on all of them to some extent would help versus neglecting one completely, right? That comes to mind. And then the second thing is testing, measuring, and then going by the things that are improving that would have improved if you knew the problem was gone.
Yep.
So I had a client recently who, a long-term client, and it's a similar situation you said, like she knew what to do and wasn't doing it, and it was showing in the results, right? Mm-hmm. And as soon as she, for example, started eating more, whatever it was, and the next day, hey, feeling great. I was scared about regaining weight, for example, but I'm not anymore because I realized that what's more important is this other thing. And I was, way worse off with that. And I'm not going into details here, but it's good, Carl. Okay. So
hold on. There's one thing I got to add there that's really, really important.
Yeah.
We don't give ourselves enough credit when it comes to looking at our past experience. So for me, in terms of training, for example, I knew what I liked to do for training before I was as consistent as I am now, and I deviated from that. So when I had my wake up call, I'm like, Carl, just what do you like to do for training that gets you results? And so that's why I'm doing the style that I do now. So if we can get quiet and reflect on once upon a time when we were experiencing the opposite of that which we don't want to be experiencing right now, and put the pieces of the puzzle together of what was different then as compared to now, hence the second or the third question, don't want versus do want, it becomes pretty clear that you already know the answers.
So that's interesting. That brings up also the idea of if you are testing and measuring and taking action and things are not going as planned, right? How you learn from that experience. I mean, that's what comes to mind to me as well, because I'm sure you've done your prep work and you did some integration and it's not giving you what you want.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
No,
go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Just that to me, this is where the 80-20 rule really applies. Like, I know my results are going to come from 20% of the work, but typically speaking, if I'm not getting results from the integration steps that I've been dedicating my time and energy to doing, there's really about 20% of my excuses or reasons that are going to be why. And one of them is going to be, you haven't been doing it long enough. Plain and simple. So say, for example, my podcast, right? Like, I don't have the quote unquote amount of followers and downloads that I want right now. And why is that? Oh, well, there's 1,000,001 reasons. But the main reason that I am choosing to entertain, I just haven't been doing I haven't gotten in the reps yet. I need to get in more reps. I am convinced, because this is what so many successful people in front of me have told me, is that you just need to get in more reps. So I am committed to getting in the reps. So if ever anything's not working, it typically boils down to, have I really given it a chance?
True. I mean, we talk about consistency and it's become a buzzword, but really
it should be replaced with commitment.
Yeah. Commitment. Yeah. Right. Doing something for a repeated basis over time, not perfectly and not necessarily every day, but continuously over time. You know, you can miss a podcast episode, but you do the next 10, you're still golden. As soon as you drop off, that's where the challenge comes in. All right, one or two more things. You got time? A couple minutes?
Of course. Yeah, of course.
Okay. You and I had I think it was a conversation over text not long ago about not being reactionary, or conversely reacting too quickly when you hear something on a podcast and be like, oh, that blows my mind. You know, it just opened my mind. It changed my mind, whatever. You probably know what I'm talking about, right? Almost like sometimes what might be a notable quotable is really just a soundbite that just sounds great in the moment.
Yeah.
And then you're like, you want to take action on it, but maybe you shouldn't. Maybe you should step back and like just wait and sit with it. So what are your thoughts on that?
Okay, so I'm trying to think of who quoted this on my podcast.
It was
actually, I think it was that
thing. Yeah, awareness, or was it the awareness? And
either
the
way,
first step is not awareness or whatever.
No, I'll summarize it right now. But Di talked about when you know your values, it's very easy to say yes or no to things. So if you know specifically what your targets are in a specific area, say, for example, your physique. Okay, well, I know what I'm eating today in Macro Factor already because it's programmed in there. And I've left some room because it's Friday, so I'm probably going to have a cocktail. So there's room in there for that. But if something comes up and Jenny Lee wants to go somewhere or something, it's like, it's not part of the plan right now. Like, it's not Macro Factor. We're going to do this. So when I'm crystal clear on what my macros are, it's easy for me to say, no, I can't have that. So what if instead of macros, whatever area of the prep work you're talking about, you are so crystal clear on the behaviors that are taking you to where you want to go that you do only those behaviors. So say, for example, with my podcast, right? Like the podcast, I'm not going to say it's my life, but in a way it kind of is. Like it kind of is. So I know, actually, let me put it this way. In my phone, I have an app called Done. It's a free app. It's a habit tracker. And inside of there, I've established what my big lifts are for each area of the prep work. So what is my squat, my bench, and my dead for my purpose? What's my squat, my bench, and my dead for my relationships? I have one thing for each area of the prep work, but I know what those 3 lifts are for me. So those are the things I'm focused on a daily basis. I have to hit those things. If I get other things in, sure, that's fine, but I don't need to because I am crystal clear on what is most important. And the less clarity you have on what's most important, the more likely you are to do that which is not important.
Okay, I get that. So what about the situation where you haven't been able to crystallize that yet because there are so many angles and potential quote unquote facts and evidence and things. And I'll be very concrete. One of my followers reached out by email and said, I really trust your opinion, but here are 10 things that are all different and conflicting that I'm hearing from influencers and this doctor and this person about all sorts of things, whatever, carbs and keto and this and that. Okay. And they all conflict. And it's like, she felt that a lot of them were trustworthy sources and she's not sure which one to go with. And that's just an example. Like I gave her clarity. I gave her my strong opinion on which way to go. She's like, all right, cool, I'm good. But when people are just not sure from day one, they haven't gotten to that point, like I was for 20 years in the health and fitness space, and just didn't know what to do. How do you get that clarity, right? That's like the premise.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll address 2 things. The first one, this is what I would say to Carl. Okay, so I'm not necessarily going to say this to your listeners, but I would be sharp. And for me, I would really appreciate it if I came to you and I was listing all these things, I would really appreciate, because I know myself well enough that this is what I'm doing. I'd appreciate if you said, Carl, why do you keep using this as an excuse to not take action? Like, why are you so afraid to fail? Because I know if I'm skipping from one thing to the other, it's because I'm afraid of failure. If I'm making excuses and finding all these things as to now I know which one I don't want to do, it's because I'm just uncomfortable with uncertainty. So I would ask myself, Carl, when are you going to allow yourself to be okay with uncertainty? because we don't know which one of this is going to work. Like Philip's a brilliant guy. We can take his advice. It might not work for you, but at some point in time, and that time is right fucking now, you're going to have to make a decision to take action. So ask yourself which one of these feels the best, and then be okay if it doesn't work out. Like,
cool. That's good. Yeah, I agree.
But then the clarity piece of it, right?
Well, wait. So, and like you said, if it doesn't work out, so all it really comes down to is take action on something, do it, test, see if it goes. If it doesn't, off the list, go to the next thing.
Yeah,
maybe, right? I mean, granted, you can get complicated and say like certain things are going to be more out there than others, and blah blah blah. But I could tell when I got to 2020 and I found like starting strength and muscle strength pyramids and all of that, and I'm like, oh, this new way to lift for me. I also didn't know if it would work, but I'm like, it seems like it should based on what all these people are saying, and like these are smart folks. I'm just going to do it, and it worked, and so I stuck with it. Anyway, continue.
That's exactly how it goes too. It's like, it's interesting. I was having a conversation with a brother of ours yesterday, and it had to do with relationships. And what do you do when there's a recurring conflict in your relationship? Like, when do you sweep things under the rug? And when do you say, "Okay, I know we don't want to have this conversation, but we need to have it." And the bottom line is, how much does it hurt? Like, how much does the pain of continuing down the path you're going on supersede the pain of taking action to potentially change your trajectory? And the answer to that question will give you the answer that you need, but you don't want to hear.
Yep.
Because we all know if you're contemplating taking action on something, you're already at the point where you should have taken action a long time ago. And that's the way that I look at it. It's like, oh, should I have done this? Yeah, of course you should have done it sooner. So like, we always hear better late than never, but let's not even make never an option. Like, take action.
Cool, man. Good. No, I just wanted to put it out there for people. This whole episode, this whole discussion is about that. It's about taking that action. And the only way you do it is identify it, do it. Do it, and then test it. All right, cool. So, you could ask yourself the next question, which is there anything else you wanted me to ask
that you didn't cover? Ask?
Yeah.
It's funny, as we were talking, I had a good one in my mind and I should have written it down because I forgot it. Here's a question that, this is coming to me right now. So I'm not sure where this is going to go, but I'm curious what I would have said if you asked me, what is the biggest regret you have right now as it relates to your health and fitness?
The biggest regret right now in your health and fitness. Okay.
Yeah. And the answer was in my head before I was even done the sentence. I would have gotten a coach a lot sooner. Because the transformations that and again, Philip didn't sponsor me or anything to say this shit. This is just what came up. The transformations I've been able to make on a multitude of levels as a result of our friendship, the bond that we have, but then your coaching and your willingness to press me compassionately have changed not just my physique, but my relationship with food, my relationship with fitness. Like food, I do food prep almost every single day now. I'll do food prep before I go to the gym, and not like schedule wise, but if I have to pick one or the other, I'll do my food prep. And that was like pulling teeth before. But now, as a result of tracking my calories, I realize just how important that is. But sure, I can say that my relationship with food and my relationship with fitness is so much better, and I'm enjoying those. And that is not a small feat at all, because even being a trainer, I would have to drag my ass to the gym a lot of the time. Now I can't wait to go. But like, all that is translated into my relationship with you and my relationship with Jenny Lee specifically. Like, I've got Jenny Lee on Macro Factor. She's a lot more conscious about what we're eating. And as a result of me feeling and looking a lot better, that's translated into me being a better podcaster and a better partner for Jenny Lee. So it's stuff that I would tell myself I could have done on my own before. But if I could have done it on my own, I would have done it on my own. So it wasn't until I got a coach.
That means a lot to me, man. And for folks listening, I think they hear this message a lot and don't take action on it. Do you agree? There's a lot of people like that.
Yeah, because I'm the same way. Like, how long did it take me to start doing the shit that you told me to do forever and a day ago, and that I already knew I needed to do? But then also from other areas of life as well. Like, I know, and there's still places like I could be investing way more in a business coach. I could be investing way more. Yeah, it would never hurt to have a relationship coach. Like JL and I are really good, so I don't know if the cost benefit ratio would be there. But yeah, if you're constantly on a treadmill to nowhere and you don't have a coach, the coach is going to tell you to get your ass off the treadmill and let me show you the real way to walk. So yeah, it's
true. And I think we can't deny that having other people of some kind in our life that are supportive is kind of where it starts, right? And that's what a coach is. That's what a brother is. That's what a friend, a really good friend who isn't sabotaging you, right? Who is positive and with you on that is. That's what a online community could be too. So, because sometimes people hear, oh, they are selling a coach and I can't afford a coach. First of all, I would say, like, you'll find a way when it comes to money to do things that are the most important to you in your life and that are going to change your life compared to all the other junk we spend money on. But besides the money, it's just don't do it on your own is really the key message.
Exactly. Don't do it on your own.
Yeah. Cool, man. Well, this has been a pleasure. It was every time we meet on this show, it's a very different kind of feel and topic that I think is super valuable to the listener. And I hope everyone listening will take Carl's words and actions and thoughts to heart. I want you to reach out to him. I'm definitely going to include Carl's IG, which is at Ignite the Impact. Because remember, the podcast is... Oh, hold on. I'm blanking out here.
I'm so memorable.
No, because your IG is different than your podcast. So tell the audience the difference, and so we can be clear.
Inspired by Impact is the podcast. I tried to get Inspired by Impact for my IG, and it was taken. So it's Ignite the Impact.
Because sometimes when I want to IG you, I start typing Inspired. I'm like, let me just type Carl, and IG's smart enough to find it.
I should have come up with this idea like 10 years ago.
No worries. Is that where you want people to reach you from this show?
Definitely reach out on there. Or you know what would be kind of cool to see too? I know at least on Spotify, they have that area where you can, like, it pops up and you can leave some feedback right there, right? Like when you're listening to the podcast.
Q&A,
the Q&A thing. So just ask a question. And if you want, like, I've got the MMU blueprints. If anybody's interested in that, like, it's a digital download, just shoot me a message and I'll send it to you. It doesn't cost anything. So, really,
do we have a link? Do we have a link for that?
Yeah. I'll send you a link. Okay. I'll send you a link for that. Yeah.
All right. Because people want to know where do I get this incredible format that they can guide them through this exact process?
Oh, the physical training manual, that's got to be earned. That the five.
I don't mean the physical. You said you have a digital one.
Yeah. That one, I just, I'll give it away for free. I don't care. So.
Yeah, for sure. So we'll include that. We'll include your IG. We'll include the link to the podcast as always. You guys know where to find me, where to find Carl. And man, thanks again for coming on.
Thank you, my man. This was beautiful as always.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Wits and Weights. If you found value in today's episode and know someone else who's looking to level up their wits or weights, please take a moment to share this episode with them. And make sure to hit the follow button in your podcast platform right now to catch the next episode. Until then, stay strong. Hey, before you go, I want to let you know about a free resource I have. They are free guides on everything from fat loss to eating out to building muscle to managing hunger to figuring out the best macros for you and more being added all the time. You want to get the most out of these podcasts and your time to look and feel your best, and these free guides will give you a quick and easy way to know what to do. If you want to get your hands on these completely free guides, you can head over to witsandweights.com/free. That's witsandweights.com/free to get your free guides and level up your results today.